So in just 2 months, I generated almost $200,000 in sales. And I want to teach you how I did this using only image ads by showing you the 4 image ad types that I use or formats that I use to be able to generate results like this that you see on screen. So maybe you've been watching my content. You've gotten an interest in running some long form copy, native style image ads, like image ads with long copy. You want to try the strategy out. Hopefully you saw my last video where I taught you how to write effective leads. And now the natural question is, okay, what images do I use? And if you're watching this video, you probably don't want to be like the 99% of copycats who are just kind of blindly ripping without really understanding what's going on. So I'm going to teach you in this video the 4 main image ad formats that I use to make this strategy produce 6 figures in sales. And I'm also going to explain to you how they work and why we use them, so that way you don't have to blindly copy and you can watch this video start to finish and be able to take these strategies, implement them into your business. And I just want to say, I'm not going to sell you on trying this. All I'm going to say is try the strategy out. And if it doesn't work, then that'll be your way to determine whether or not I'm full of shit, because I'm tired of like selling people on how effective the strategy is. I'm just going to say, try it. And I promise you, you're at the very least, going to learn way more than you ever would just blindly ripping content. Shout out to Kirby, who just came into the group. And before he joined, he was hitting 10% profit margins. And now he's hitting higher revenue numbers with higher margins, mostly from this strategy. So that's all I'm going to say. Just try it out for yourself. All right. So let's go ahead and dive into the exact formats that you should be using. Now, I'm going to go ahead and start off with the first format here. And you'll see I have the actual image ad format. This is one of my most viral ads from running this store. As you can see, 500 interactions, 50 comments, 45 shares. And the first image style is going to be one that I call one core emotion. Now, what is one core emotion and why is this important? Now, before we actually dive into why we use this format specifically, let's talk about how the brain actually processes information. So the brain actually processes feelings significantly faster than words, and emotional responses begin in milliseconds, and they often bypass the conscious, rational part of the brain. Language and conscious thought, in contrast, are much slower and more complex processes. So the reason why this is important is because you have to remember that when you're scrolling on Facebook, when you're scrolling through ads, on the Facebook feed, as you scroll, you are literally consuming thousands, if not tens of thousands of pieces of information per second. You've got ads, you've got organic photos, you've got the little stupid thing in the top right corner to invite you to play this stupid mobile app game, right? There's all this information coming in. And so as someone is scrolling, they are not literally reading word for word, line by line, every single thing that shows up on their feed. What's happening is they're scrolling and their brain is processing feelings in literally the span of milliseconds. And if we can incite the correct feeling, or if the correct feeling is incited, and if there's a strong enough emotional response, then that person will stop and engage with that content, which is why if you run video ads, you know the hook is one of the most important things, because you have to grab somebody's attention and then you have to drive enough of an emotional response to actually get them to engage with your content. It's the same thing with an image ad. If you actually look at an image ad, the canvas itself, yes, the hook is important and you want to have a really attention-grabbing first sentence. I actually think this first sentence isn't really particularly good, but the ad itself performed really well. When you look at an image ad, you'll notice that the canvas of the image ad, or the actual creative, by the way, the reason why this is called a creative refers to this portion of the ad, okay? So this portion of the ad actually takes up the largest part of the canvas. So if someone's scrolling on their feed, if this is a mobile feed, whatever's in this box here is going to represent typically, I mean, depending on like obviously the aspect ratio, but it's going to be about 80 to 90% of the actual image ad. Then you have the hook, and then you have the headline, which doesn't even show up on most placements. This shows up, I think, maybe on like desktop feed, mobile feed, all the other ones. It doesn't even show up. So really you have this, which is guaranteed to show up on everything. And then your first sentence is guaranteed to show up on everything, right? And so what we want to do with our images when we're selecting ones to run with our ads is we want to select an image that's going to drive one core emotion. As soon as somebody looks at it, the emotion that we want them to feel should be immediate and it should be obvious. So when you see an image of a sad cat, you should feel sad, or you should feel fearful. And the hook and the image work together to drive the emotional response, which in this case is sadness. So the first image type is going to be native images that drive one core emotion. And as you saw in the previous video, by the way, if you haven't watched my video on leads, I'm going to link it in the description because that is lesson 1. So go back to that video so you can actually follow along with this one. But we talked about the rule of one big idea, one core emotion, one benefit, one story. So you should already have in mind one core emotion that you want to drive into your customer's mind, or you want to try and elicit from your customer. In this case, it's sadness. And the first native image is just finding images that drive that core emotion that you're trying to really elicit in your lead. So if I am writing a piece of copy and I want to drive shame, or I want to drive happiness, it doesn't always have to be these negative emotions. Or if I want to drive hope or embarrassment, you get the idea. Then the image should reflect that. Now, I know from the research that I've done that this market, one of the core drivers for purchase decisions emotionally is fear. So fear is an image, or fear is an emotion that I want my images to drive. So if you look at all of my best performing images, you will notice that the common emotion that they drive is fear. So here's a good example of a woman holding a cat who very subtly looks sad. You can't really see her full face, but the emotion being driven here is fear. And you can even see I've emphasized that in the hook here as well. So that's the first native image or image style to run. I just call it one core emotion. So find a native image, no text, no editing. You can generate this with ChatGPT, with Higgsfield. Again, the idea here is you pick your one emotion. Let's say it's fear. Okay. And then you just focus on different ways to communicate that. And hopefully you guys have done research to understand what are the particular fears that your audience has, and then try and communicate them visually. And you can do different color cats. You can do like little image variations like that, as long as they all drive that same core emotion. Okay, so that's the first one. Second one is going to be the transformation. Now, the reason why this is important is, again, going back to the rule of one, we have one belief typically that we want to try and shift or convince the audience of. So the big idea of your copy, whatever that is, it needs to be easy to believe. And the easiest way to make somebody believe something is to show them results, which is why I open these videos showing my results, showing our community member results, because results speak for themselves. And they're the easiest, no-nonsense way to get somebody to believe that your product can actually do what you say it does. So transformations, or in other words, belief shift style images, are pretty simple to explain. Okay, as you can see, not pretty self-explanatory. In the before state, she's balding. In the after state, her hair looks miraculously regrown. Now, obviously, you have to be careful. You don't want to be doing anything deceptive where you're showing some guy who's like, let's say he's like 5'5", and then he grew to like 6 foot tall with your drop shipped AliExpress supplement. It's like, probably want to stay away from that, but as long as the transformations themselves are believable. And this before and after is just one type of transformation. You know, you might show grandma who's just going on a hike, right? And you're selling a knee pain relief product. Same idea, you have that transformation being communicated. And really quick, I want to say, if you're doing a transformation image, then only use this if your product has a visual transformation. Otherwise, forget it. So the cat water fountain is a good example where all of the health benefits are actually happening to the cat's internal organs. You might see noticeable energy, and that might be something that we communicate, like lethargy, or maybe a cat is not as active as they once were. Those are things that you can see visually, but it's not a true visual transformation delivering product in the same way that an anti-aging cream is, or a hair regrowth supplement is. So I would say only use this if your product has a visual transformation. Otherwise, just completely skip it. But I know a lot of you guys are in supplements, skincare, beauty, cosmetics. Those products and categories tend to crush it with the transformation style image. Okay, let's move on. Number 3 is the bold claim. So this one I would say to use with caution, because if you get this right, you will see your cost per click drop as low as 20 cents. And I've seen it even further than 20 cents. And the reason for that is because, as you can see by the title of this image type, we are intentionally clickbaiting people with a bold or controversial claim. We might even, I think I'm going to change this to more accurately reflect what I think is really going on here. Okay? Which is a bold and controversial claim. So this is where we're sort of we're not bypassing emotion, but the main emotion we're making people feel is almost like frustration, or yeah, I would say frustration, in the sense that we're going to make a claim that is intentionally going to grab a lot of attention. So in this ad, right, I said most cat owners don't realize their fountain is making their cat sick, but did you know ... So what I'm making here is a very bold claim that if you are a cat owner and you read this, you're probably going to be like, wait, what the fuck? Like, what do you mean it's making my cat sick? And in that moment, I have already grabbed and captivated your attention. And you can see here a common pattern that maybe I haven't emphasized enough is the hook and the image, you really want to make them work together. Okay. So as you can see, I'm reinforcing that bold claim in my hook as well. Okay. And you want to use the hook and the image together to drive whatever kind of emotion or response you're going for with your creative. So this format, again, use at your own caution. This is where you're going to have to do a little bit of Canva editing, but it is so simple. I mean, come on, guys, if you can't do this, then fuck, you might as well give up on drop shipping or even starting any business if you can't put square image together with Canva with black text and a white background. But anyways, take a controversial claim. Typically in your research, as you put together your research documents, you're doing deep research with ChatGPT and Claude, you should get an idea for what your customers' existing beliefs are. For example, an existing belief that my audience had was that all fountains, as long as I get a fountain, my cat will be hydrated. Okay, that is a core existing belief that people in my audience have. In actuality, there's a huge discrepancy in quality between fountains that lead to certain fountains either growing bacteria, growing mold, breaking entirely. And so there's actually a huge discrepancy that all leads later on down the road to your cat potentially not drinking as much water. So that is why I called out this existing belief, made a controversial claim, and the cost per click on this, anytime you run this format, is going to drop to the floor. So just be careful, okay? You are going to get, I'm gonna warn you right now, you are going to get a lot of low quality traffic to your landing page. Not always, but if you're getting 20-cent clicks, it's usually the case that you're getting people who are just getting hooked in by the controversial claim. Now, this can be a great format. If you are running either of these two formats and you are seeing CPM through the roof, or you're seeing CPC through the roof, I would go straight to running this format. Like if you've tried the strategy out a little bit, or you've tried other kinds of images, I would throw one of these in there, because I have seen it time and time and again where this format it's crazy what it does to the cost per click. So definitely give this a shot if you're struggling with CPM and CPC. And then the last and final format is going to be what I call the problem state. Now, the problem state, similar to the emotional response image that we just covered, is really all-encompassing. There's so much you can do here with the problem state. And I chose this particular image because I think it's a great example of a brand that is effectively leveraging the capabilities of ChatGPT to drive creative diversity in their ad account. Because if someone was going to run, or maybe your first thought when you thought of the problem state is to show like a grandma, or in the case of a hair loss product, a grandma who has like balding hair, right? But what's cool with ChatGPT is you can do and create all of these different visual metaphors that still communicate the problem state to your audience, but in a really unique way. Like this image is so unique, yet I can already kind of tell without even seeing the copy that this is a hair follicle, right? Or like, why is one here growing and why is this one like ingrown, right? Like what's happening here? And so the problem state is very self-explanatory. You're going to choose an image or create an image with ChatGPT that communicates visually, again, with no editing, no text overlays, no nothing, no headlines. It communicates visually the current state of your audience. You can do something like this. You could show more in detail balding. I personally, whenever I'm doing this format, I stick to these sort of like visual metaphors. And I would strongly recommend that if you can find them, try Bello in the ad library. They are probably leading the charge in this department. They have some of the best visual metaphor image ad creatives that I've seen. I don't really see anyone running creatives that strongly or to the same level as these guys when it comes to before state images that are not just so blatantly, their audience in pain or whatever. I've seen one where they have like a piece of grass growing out of somebody's scalp. and just these really interesting and curiosity driving visuals that still focus on the problem state. So again, self-explanatory here. In the problem state image, you just want to focus on either visual metaphors, direct visuals, cartoons, whatever, really attention grabbing ways and unique and interesting visually ways that you can communicate the current situation of your avatar. And again, what's great about this is you can use this across any niche. Like every niche that you're selling to, if you've chosen your product correctly, is going to be one where you're trying to solve a particular problem. And you can get really creative with ChatGPT, come up with 10 ways to communicate the problem visually. Don't use my product in them, and then just throw that into a ChatGPT prompt and just start generating images and letting them fly. Okay, so guys, that's it. Those are the 4 images that you need to be able to run long form copy. Let's do a quick recap. The number 1 image that you should have in your ad account is the 1 core emotion. Remember, we talked about how the brain processes images significantly faster than words. And so if we want to captivate someone's attention and to get them to read our copy, our hook, our lead, our unique mechanisms, and to be convinced of buying the product, we first need to incite an emotional response that is strong enough to get them to actually engage with our content. And the easiest way to do that is to think about the main goal of our image to be driving an emotional response and grabbing attention. That is the only goal of our image. So in the first format, it's all about just communicating as natively as possible 1 core emotion. So figure out what that is for your audience. What are the 3 top core emotions that drive a purchase decision? For example, in a lot of preventative care and medicine, it's obviously going to be fear, because you fear losing your cat or you fear the safety of your child. So communicate that visually. Or it could be, let's say it's embarrassment if you're selling a hair loss supplement. Showing a guy who's, again, covering his hat with a cap or something. Or it could be, maybe it could even be like guilt, right? Like guilt you haven't bought a particular product for a child. Whatever it is, that core emotion, focus on driving it visually. Next, we talk about the transformation or belief shift. This one's very obvious, a before and after, or even just a direct transformation to shift an existing belief through results and proof. That's the reason why I start off these videos with results and proof, because there's nothing that can change somebody's belief as effectively as showing them irrefutable evidence and proof that your product does what you say it does. Now, keep in mind, only use this if your product has a visual transformation. Otherwise, you're pretty much more often than not better off going with any of the other 3 formats. 3 is going to be the controversial claim or clickbait. Guys, I would only recommend you use this if, like from the get-go, if your CPM and CPC are really high, because this can really help drive down the click costs. The problem with that is because if you make a controversial enough claim, your clicks are going to go so low, and you're going to cast the net even wider and start getting a bunch of low quality traffic to your site. Now, I do know people in our community that are running this ad and they're getting like 20-cent clicks. They have a 0.7% conversion rate and they're profitable. So just keep that in mind. You're going to get really low cost per clicks if you do this correctly. But again, the idea here is making somebody feel like, wait, what? And then that hopefully drives them to actually read the copy. And then lastly, the problem state. And we talked about how this is very straightforward. Just select images that are going to communicate the problem or the current situation of your avatar, but you want to do so in a very creative way. Use ChatGPT to create, like, think about before ChatGPT, who the fuck was creating visuals like these? And you probably, watching this video, could not even come close to creating a visual like this. Now with ChatGPT, you can literally create anything. So don't just show generic shit of your, like if you sell a knee pain product, don't just show like a grandma in a wheelchair or a grandma holding her knee pain. Hopefully you guys are not using grandmas in wheelchairs to sell products. But communicate visually the problem state of your avatar. Don't use images that you could make or create or use before ChatGPT. Leverage this amazing tool to be able to create really diverse and unique visuals that showcase your customer's problem state and that are going to drive that emotional response to make them want to engage with your copy. So guys, those are the 4 image types that you need to use if you want to get results using native images and long form copy. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. That's going to do it for this one. Drop a comment if there's any topics that you want to see me cover next. But this video is part of a lengthy series that I'm going to be doing, breaking down how to run native image ads with long form copy. I'm not 100% sure what video is going to be next because I want to tackle this in the correct order. But for now, we've covered the leads, how to write hooks and leads for your long form copy, and then how to come up with images, the 4 foundational images that you want to start using if you want to actually start testing the strategy. And of course, all of my prompts for generating copy, for coming up with desires, angles, writing the actual copy itself, doing research, all of that is going to be linked in the description for free. And there's no link to any courses or anything like that. You can literally just grab the prompts for free so you can test this out for yourself and start getting results. So guys, again, drop a comment if there's any videos you want me to see, you want me to cover next. But otherwise, hope you guys enjoyed this one as always, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace.